The debate in Tillotson you're talking about, that's the one at Davidson College?
Yeah, supposed to be one there for Time Warner. There's supposed to be one also at WRAL the next day. So yeah, I'm not sure how much longer to have. I really wanted. I've been to 9 or 10 debate before, so they've all forums. But the other candidates have come everywhere. They've been great to come in with debate issues. I'm applying for a job to be your ambassador, and he has either the ignorance or the arrogance that think it's not important. I don't understand it. Would you hire anybody if you didn't interview? So those debates can be televised, short minutes. I'd like to come for 3 or 4 hours and being asked any question in the world. See, so if I just know what the numbers are doing right now, I know we're gonna win. So that's pretty exciting.
I believe that it's far later in the game. And I want to know if the people in this room agree with it. There's a question that it's far later in the game. It's a little late to debate if the Constitution is right or wrong. I think everybody in this room loves the Constitution. I think what we need to debate is how we're going to throw those devils out of Washington, D.C. and get our country back. Because that is the game we're about to play. It's sort of like, I don't know, when the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor, we want to debate, did they declare war first or something? It's way late for this.
Well, I'm going to respectfully disagree. I think to get to your endpoint, you must go back to the Constitution. And I don't want to change the rules that we have. Then becomes the idea of amend. And I think, I was very fortunate, last Friday, Senator Lee came to town and we did a couple of fundraisers across the state. And this was completely humbling. He said, the only guy close to Greg Brannon on constitutional knowledge is Ted Cruz. See, but again,
I agree.
Okay, but again, if I'm a pelvic surgeon and we're too down far the path because I'm operating on your brain, you're going to die. We got to get a neurosurgeon for your brain. We need to get men and women to honor. I don't believe we're too far down the path. Look at the Third Amendment. What's the Third Amendment say? Does anybody know?
This country is not operating under the Constitution.
It will with men and women who honor their oath, and you and I don't vote for those who don't. See, the structure, sir, is perfect. We just got to hold men and women accountable who are asking to be our trustees. If we just say, well, my 13-year-old always drives my car, I'll let him continue to drive my car because we're too down far the path. The answer is no. That's why I think it's important to have those positions. Now, is it easy? No, because the men and women that are already taken from us are going to be they have more money, they're going to fight. I understand the fight. But 3% of Americans went to war against Great Britain, with a max around 30 and we won. That lovely man, I met him at a Tea Party function. I bet you in the wintertime, right? You know that? No, the guy behind you. Yeah. He goes, all I hear is Tea Parties are racist. And he goes, I heard you speak, Greg. Boy, he goes, I'm a Tea Party. See, we're blowing this away because you're going to get Miss Renee have to debate him why she is okay that she supersedes Article 1, Section 8. We're going to get Mr. Till. Well, after I get to Mr. Tillis, Ms. Hagan, I read Dodd-Frank, every word of it. I want to know how the crisis the government caused now has 16 more titles that can take private property away. I want to know, as she voted for Obamacare, that I read every word of it, that enslaves every human being. I want to know, because then we win the war.
The same man in 2007, when this country crashed, are still in power.
Yes,
and I mentioned move them. The rest of this
right. Now, you answered your question in your comment when you said it's up to us to get the right people into office, and that is the responsibility. But we cannot dismiss the Constitution from contemporary discussions of public policy. It is critical. If you think it's old-fashioned, you're doing yourself a disservice. It is still the critical binding element that controls the federal government. We can talk about current contemporary policy and include the Constitution. I talked to you about the 5 issues I'm talking about in my book. These are all issues that are being abused constitutionally that are impacting our economy, our standard of living, our ability to create wealth, family formation, and business formation. So we can never, ever forget the Constitution, no matter how far away from the constraints we are, because we must continue every day to work ourselves back in there. I remind you quickly, though, to the extent that we are successful, remember the burden falls back to the states. And let me warn you now, the states are not ready for that burden. The debt burden is complicating the state's efforts to be constitutional as well as the federal level. So to the extent we're successful at the federal level, we're going to have to work even harder at the state level.
My question is do we have time to straighten this country out.
I'm going to go back to optimistic then, because, as Henry said, our only guidepost to the future is a lampstand in history. In this country, again, 3%. Go back to the Third Amendment. It's how bad America was there that a British officer with a general warrant could go to your house and stay. Which is happening right now. The general warrant is collecting all this stuff on our phone right now today. Not just her or him, but also the government, the NSA. So these days, I believe biblically that no, it says very clearly that man's nature never changed. There was no control of the men. So I'm optimistic because we have the Constitution. Because we have men and women that will not waver. I believe the truth will win the day if we have the guts to stand up for it and not cave in and compromise on those core principles. I'm so optimistic. I've seen it happen. We've driven over 100,000 miles this campaign. I've still delivered, I've delivered 250 babies in this game. I'm not a solo practitioner. I'm not being paid by the government or by an entity to give my servant citizen. I'm doing both jobs. We need servant citizens that know the Constitution, the rule of law, and will not waver. I kept Hippocratic Oath for 26 years. I fought for the safety of life for my whole life. But I wouldn't be doing a disservice to you or to me if I did not know the Constitution. There are men and women on our side right now who said they'll vote for the law if it's the greater good. They'll vote for the law. So no, if it's not constitutional, then it's the rule of men over the rule of law. Then where the issue is, you take it, you put it through the prism of Article 1, Section 8, and there's your answer. Now there's triaging involved, because we have $220 on file liabilities. We have unconscious acts. I don't go in the pelvis, and you have to triage what the most important thing is, and you work your back your way over. I think that we're talking about the 16th fair tax. I would like the 16th Amendment to come and be gone away. Because Article 1, Section 8, Clause 1 gives the government 4 ways to raise taxes. Taxes, excise, and imposed duties. Today, the federal government has still of the money. 60% of the money still comes from that. Run the government on $1.3 trillion if you did your constitutional acts. Income tax, Reagan wants to know, where does your income tax go to run the government? It's called the Grace Report. It goes the interest on the debt to a private bank. See, that's your property, your labor, your pursuit of happiness. We don't work for them.
On the issue of timing, is there time? You and I in this room as conservatives, we see the horizon and we think we see a cliff. We think America is on a second-rate nation status path. Let me provide you a little scenario. Last year we had a government shutdown, voluntary government shutdown. Do you remember the little chaos that ensued? Right? The Republicans that agreed to the shutdown quickly caved in to giving the money back, a little piecemeal return to funds to this constituency and that constituency. That was a voluntary government shutdown. As an economist and financial market expert, the real risk for us is the involuntary government shutdown, and that relates exactly to your question of how much time we have. The Treasury auctions money 3 times a week, every week. We have to finance $3.5 billion a day, every single day. The day comes when an auction fails. Okay, we don't get to borrow as much money as we're trying to borrow that day. Is the day the clock stops ticking and time is up. And half of America, dependent on government, both individuals and businesses, are instantly at risk. And the trickle-down effect for the rest of the economy becomes instantly accelerated. So right now, we have time. But the reason I'm in this race is because the clock is ticking. And we will never not exist. America is going to remain here. This piece of land will remain here. But what kind of nation will it be? What standard of living will it have? What kind of wealth gap will there be? What kind of social upheaval will occur? The clock is ticking. We don't have much more time. If we don't straighten out these things quickly, China will decide the day that involuntary government shutdown happens.
I want to know, what do you propose to do about the mileage tax they're talking about proposing? You pay so much more for how much you drive. Another question is, what can be done about mandating everything down to the federal government, to the state to us, and they got to check with them before they do anything?
Okay, this is why I think the premise of the Constitution is everything. Everything we're discussing tonight is the federal government usurped its power. They usurp their power. One of the laws, a natural law, is the right to travel. See, because we capitulate and say, what are we going to do with the tax? How about, no. How about you and I run for office? You and I don't give money to those who compromise core beliefs. I just believe there's a revolution of ideas occurring, and we're going back to go forward. Okay, mandates. Here's what you do. The federal government has no power, and Article 1, Section 8 is not there. The state legislators have the backbone to say no. But our state, the English education, out here that Purdue took the money for Common Core because it would actually help raise the top money and help No Child Left Behind money. Why do we, well, who actually wrote the bill for Common Core in our state assembly? Republicans. Our governor likes it. See, we got to throw this away and go back to who we really are. If a law actually infringes on individual rights, inalienable rights, we just must say no. It's going to take us, I don't believe in the Second Amendment to fight this, because the ideas will win if you get the Lees, the Pauls, the Crews, you get Frank fighting, you get me fighting, and you say no. But you got to have people that don't care about being called every bad thing in the world. I don't care. I'm a born-again Christian, I'm saved, I have nobody here to worry about. So what I want to do is stand firm on that idea. So I'm very optimistic because our founders pledged their life, they lost it. They pledged their fortune, and they lost it. They pledged their sacred honor and did not lose it, is why we're even here. Find those men and women, be those men and women, and the revolution will continue.
The issue on the mandates from the federal government, here's the key thing, and Greg points it out critically, it's as a result of those we stand to office at the state level for the House and the Senate. These mandates come with cash attached. The challenge is to say no to the cash. That is the difficulty. Not to mention the other point that doesn't require states to comply. But the cash is the key thing, and it ties right into your privatization comment, which started your question. Remember the basic point we're challenged here. Categorically, bad management of fiscal finances at the state and federal level for 50 years. Deficits at every level, local, state, and federal. $23 trillion plus in national debt. The reason why they're considering charging you for your mileage is because of this privatization notion that Republicans had put forth long ago. And it comes from the basic point that we've misallocated taxes and fees at the state and federal level. So how do we find more money? Because we've overpromised across the board. We're too afraid to pull back the promises and cut spending. So how do we find more revenue? Privatization is what they're trying to use. It comes out of Europe. And this is a misallocation of government resources. Transportation is a public good. Look this up when you go home. It's an economic concept that talks about the challenge market economies have for providing a good they can't make a profit on. This privatization effort is another public-private partnership that should pin your ears back. Richard Moore, our Secretary of the Treasury here in North Carolina, started this in North Carolina, and it's been damaging to our state. But it's the basic point is the misallocation of resources, those taxes and fees at the state and federal level as a result of those you and I send to the elected office. It always comes back to us, and those who we send to office, they're making the wrong decisions. Privatization is a mistake for America, and it has to be reversed.
We have to go back to the very first two questions an hour ago. Who's sovereign? You. What's the legitimate role of any government to protect your inalienable rights? Any other law is injustice. The tax on when you drive, the tax on your public-private partnership, your kids being forced X, Y, or Z. The answer is no. Peaceful resistance. Tea Party people, what a Tea Party will be? Frederick Douglass will be a Tea Party person. Martin Luther King will be a Tea Party person. Susan B. Anthony will be a Tea Party person. They questioned the status quo. They knew they were in God's image, and they deserved it, and they stood up and fought for it. That's why we're going to be victorious.